There is a particular kind of loneliness that has nothing to do with being alone. It is the loneliness of standing in a crowded room or lying next to someone you have known for years and realizing that the version of you they see is not the version of you that exists. It is the exhaustion of being a ghost in your own connections. You speak, but the words seem to dissolve into the air before they land. You act, but the actions register as background noise. And in the quiet moments of 2 a.m., you are haunted by a single, corrosive question. Why does my presence here feel like it requires the erasure of my needs? This is not a video about blame. It is not about what they did wrong. It is about a far more disturbing and liberating architecture of the human psyche. It is about the silent, invisible contract you signed without ever reading the fine print. A contract that trades the full spectrum of your identity for the hollow comfort of being easy to love or useful to keep around. Stay with me, because in the next 35 minutes, we are going to dismantle a psychological framework that governs nearly every unspoken resentment in human relationships. We will not just talk about feeling unappreciated. We will map the precise moment your sense of self was outsourced, and more importantly, we will chart the path back to a dynamic where your value is not a question you ask, but a fact that is felt. Chapter 1. The Architecture of Invisible Labor. Most people believe appreciation is an exchange of goods. I give you kindness, you give me thanks. I give you effort, you give me acknowledgement. It is a clean, logical marketplace of the heart. But the human mind does not operate on clean logic. It operates on adaptation, homeostasis, and a brutal psychological law known as the law of diminishing relational returns. Let's leave the world of relationships for a moment and step into the world of sensory biology. If you walk into a room with a powerful, distinct odor, perhaps fresh paint or a strong perfume, your nose is assaulted by it. You cannot ignore it. But after 15 minutes of sitting in that room, something remarkable happens. You stop smelling it. Not because the chemical particles have vanished, but because your olfactory neurons have stopped firing alerts to the brain. The stimulus is constant. Therefore, the brain categorizes it as non-threatening background noise. This is not rudeness. This is survival. The brain conserves energy by filtering out the predictable to focus on the novel. If the ceiling of your house doesn't fall down every day, you stop looking at the ceiling. Now, apply that biology to your emotional life. When you become the person who is always calm, always available, always the one to smooth over the rough edges of a day, you become the constant stimulus. You are the ceiling that never falls. But there is a deeper layer to this sensory filtering. It's called neural habituation and the hedonic treadmill of relationships. The human brain is not designed to sustain gratitude for stable resources. It is designed to detect change. If you provide a steady stream of 100 units of effort every single day, the brain recalibrates. Day 1, wow, 100 units. Day 100, where is my 100 units? It's the baseline, the floor. Anything less is a loss. This is where the quiet pain of being unappreciated takes root. You are not just being taken for granted, you are being absorbed into the environment of the other person's ego. You have become an extension of their own limbic system. You regulate their moods so they don't have to. You anticipate their needs so they don't have to feel the friction of wanting. And in doing so, you rob them of the experience of your separateness. And here is the uncomfortable truth that sits beneath the surface of why don't they notice. They do not notice, because noticing you would require them to acknowledge the burden they are not carrying. But wait, this raises a more troubling question. If the brain is so quick to filter out the constant, why do we keep providing the constant? What is the mechanism inside of us that refuses to let the ceiling fall? To answer that, we have to look at a pattern most people are terrified to name: the covert contract of conditional worth. This contract, signed in the ink of childhood experience and adolescent social negotiation, states the following clause in invisible font: I am only lovable when I am useful. My presence must be justified by my production. If I stop solving, I stop belonging. Chapter 2. The unspoken contract of the sentinel. There is a specific archetype in Jungian psychology that emerges in this dynamic. It is not the martyr. The martyr performs pain loudly, weaponizing their suffering for control. The archetype we are dealing with is more complex, more stoic, and far more tragic. It is the sentinel. The sentinel stands guard at the gate of the city. The people inside sleep soundly because they know the sentinel is awake. They plan for the harvest, they laugh at dinner, they dream of tomorrow. The sentinel scans the horizon for threats. The sentinel bears the cold of the night and the weight of the sword. And if the city is safe for 1,000 nights in a row, the people inside do not wake up on the 1,001st morning and throw a parade for the sentinel's vigilance. They simply assume the horizon is naturally safe. They forget there is even a gate. But the sentinel remembers. The sentinel knows the cost of every sleepless night. The sentinel feels the ache in the shoulders from holding the armor steady. And the sentinel harbors a secret resentment so deep it has calcified into a belief. Without me, this city would burn. And yet, I am invisible. You, as the over-functioning partner or friend, are the sentinel. You are the one who notices the subtle drop in someone's voice, so you preemptively solve a problem they haven't even voiced yet. You are the one who remembers the schedule conflicts, the dietary restrictions, the emotional triggers of everyone in the room. You hold the map of the social terrain while everyone else just walks through it, blissfully unaware of the landmines you have silently disarmed. Why does the sentinel do this? Because the sentinel believes that their value to the city is directly tied to their function. I am only welcome here if I am useful. If I put down the sword and sleep, the city falls. And then what am I? This is not a behavior. This is an identity defense mechanism. We call it functional worth attachment. You have, unconsciously, fused your sense of being loved with your capacity to serve. You do not feel appreciated for who you are, because you have never fully presented who you are. You have presented what you do, and you have done it so flawlessly that the world has accepted the transaction. Let's dissect this attachment further. It operates on 3 distinct psychological levels that intertwine to form a nearly unbreakable chain. Level 1. The anxiety of uselessness. Deep in the amygdala, there is a primal fear that predates language. In tribal times, if you were not useful to the collective, if you could not hunt, gather, or protect, you were a liability. You were left behind. The sentinel's brain interprets stopping the labor as inviting abandonment. The fear is not just of being unappreciated, it is of being exiled. Level 2. The illusion of control. By overfunctioning, you create a predictable world. If I do the planning, the dinner will be on time. If I manage the mood, there will be no fight. This is not love. This is relational air traffic control. You are guiding planes in the dark, convinced that if you take your eyes off the radar for 1 second, everything will crash. This gives you a sense of power in a dynamic where you actually feel powerless. Level 3. The echo of the parentified child. This is where the roots of the sentinel are often found. If you grew up in an environment where a parent was emotionally volatile, ill, or absent, you learned very early that your needs endangered the stability of the home. So you became small, helpful, and hyper-vigilant. You became a little adult at age 7. That child is now driving the car of your adult relationships, still scanning the horizon for threats to the fragile peace. But here is the twist that introduces the next layer of our exploration. If you are the sentinel, you are not just guarding against external threats. You are guarding against a truth you have buried so deep inside yourself that it has formed a shadow. Chapter 3. the shadow side of understanding. Let's pivot to one of the most dangerous words in the English language when used as a personality trait. Understanding. You're so understanding. I can talk to you about anything. You never judge me. These are accolades that, in the economy of the sentinel, feel like paychecks. But let's examine the shadow side of this currency. In Jungian psychology, the shadow is the repository of everything we refuse to acknowledge about ourselves, and the shadow of the understanding person is a festering pit of unexpressed rage and suppressed desire. Being understanding often masks a profound fear of conflict. Being non-judgmental often masks a terror of being judged ourselves. Being the listener often masks a deep-seated belief that our own story isn't interesting enough to tell. In the world of therapy, we talk about the concept of the container and the contained. In a healthy dynamic, this role rotates. Sometimes I hold your grief, sometimes you hold mine. But in the over-functioning dynamic, the rotation has seized up. You are stuck as the permanent container. You absorb the anxiety of the room, you metabolize other people's chaos, and you do it with a smile that says, "It's okay, I can take it." But where does that energy go? You cannot metabolize toxic emotion without it leaving a residue in your own system. This is where the quiet pain originates. It's not just sadness. It's somatic resentment. It's the body keeping score when the mind refuses to admit defeat. You feel tired, not sleepy tired, but bone weary. You feel a tightness in your chest that has no medical name. You feel a shortness of temper that shocks you because it comes out of nowhere, usually directed at a barista who got your order wrong, not the partner who just spent an hour venting about their boss without asking you how your day was. This is the spillover. The container has overflowed. And the resentment that leaks out isn't a sign that you're a bad person. It's a sign that you are a human being with a survival instinct screaming at you to stop swallowing the poison of other people's unprocessed lives. Let's go deeper into the physiology of this spillover. When you suppress your own voice to hear theirs, your vagus nerve, the superhighway of the parasympathetic nervous system that regulates safety and connection, goes into a state of freeze. You appear calm on the outside. You are the portrait of patience. But internally, your nervous system is in a state of high alert, braced for impact. This is why, after a day of being understanding, you collapse. You have been in a state of chronic dorsal vagal shutdown, playing dead to survive the emotional demand. And what is the shadow desire here? What is the thing you cannot say out loud? The shadow desire is, I want you to fail without me. Read that again. Let the weight of it settle. The sentinel, in the deepest recesses of their shadow, wants the city to suffer a crisis. Not because they are evil, but because they are exhausted of being invisible. They want the people inside to wake up and realize the gate is falling apart, and the sentinel is the only one holding it up. They want the validation that comes from absence, because they have been denied validation in presence. Chapter 4. The Narcissistic Echo Chamber, and Why You Resonate with It. Now we must tread carefully into darker waters. There is a specific type of personality that is magnetically drawn to the sentinel. And it is not because the sentinel is unlucky. It is because the architecture of the sentinel's mind is the perfect acoustic chamber for the narcissistic echo. Narcissism, in its clinical and subclinical forms, is not just self-love. It is a profound deficit in internal self-regulation. The narcissist cannot hold their own self-esteem. They need an external mirror to reflect back a version of reality where they are the protagonist. Enter the sentinel. The sentinel provides three things the narcissistic structure craves. 1. Unwavering attention. The sentinel is a master of focus. They put their phone down. They lean in. This is a narcotic for someone who needs to feel central. 2. Emotional regulation. For 2. The sentinel absorbs the shame, rage, and anxiety that the narcissist cannot process themselves. The sentinel is a living, breathing biohazard cleanup crew for emotional toxicity. 3. Low maintenance expectations. Because the sentinel has been trained that having needs is too much or selfish, they require almost nothing in return. This is the perfect arrangement for someone who views reciprocity as a loss. This is not a relationship. This is a host-parasite energetic dynamic. And while the word parasite sounds harsh, in psychological terms, it is accurate. The overgiver provides the life force. The under-receiver consumes it. But here is the twist that most self-help content misses. Why do you stay? Why does the sentinel guard a city that throws garbage out the window onto their post? We often think it's low self-esteem. It's deeper than that. It's moral superiority via suffering. There is a secret shadowy comfort in being the one who tries harder. As long as you are over-functioning, you are winning the moral high ground. You can look at the dynamic and say, look at all I do. I am the good one. I am the loving one. This is a powerful, albeit toxic, form of identity armor. If you stop over-functioning, you lose two things. 1. The relationship, which is actually just the dynamic of over-under. 2. The moral narrative that you are the victim of unappreciation. And losing that second thing is terrifying. Because if you aren't the unappreciated good one, then who are you? You have to face the blank canvas of your own identity, without the brush of other people's problems to paint with. This is the abyss of existential freedom, and most people would rather be a miserable sentinel than a free but unknown sovereign. There is another layer to this attachment. It is called trauma bonding and intermittent reinforcement. The dynamic with an under-receiver or a narcissistic personality is rarely 100% bad. If it were, you would leave. It is the moments of appreciation, the crumbs of acknowledgement that fall from the table, that keep you hooked. Behavioral psychology shows that a reward given unpredictably creates the strongest behavioral chains. You are not addicted to the pain. You are addicted to the hope that the next crumb will finally make you feel full. Chapter 5. The Turning Point. Reclaiming the Archetype. We have spent the first half of this exploration digging into the wound. Now we must talk about the suture. The shift from being unappreciated to being undeniable does not happen by yelling louder. It does not happen by making a list of grievances and presenting it at the dinner table. That is just more labor. This time, the labor of educating someone who doesn't want to attend class. The shift happens in silence. It happens in a reclamation of archetypal authority. You must demote yourself from sentinel and promote yourself to sovereign. The sentinel serves the city. The sovereign is the city. The difference is seismic. Let's break down the exact mechanics of this psychological alchemy. Part 1. The withdrawal of the automatic self. You don't need to have a dramatic fight. You need to stop being predictable. This is the most disorienting, powerful weapon in the arsenal of human behavior. When you always respond to the text in 3 seconds, and suddenly you respond in 3 hours, because you were busy living your life, the dynamic shakes. The person on the other end doesn't think, oh, she's setting a boundary. They think, something is different. The climate is changing. This is pattern interruption. It bypasses the logical neocortex and speaks directly to the limbic brain. The limbic brain is wired to detect shifts in the environment for survival. By altering your output, you force the other person to notice the air. You become novel again. You become weather instead of climate. Part 2. The art of observing without absorbing. This is the advanced psychology of emotional intelligence. When someone brings you their chaos, you do not swallow it. You place it on a table between you. You look at it. You say, I see that. That looks heavy. You do not say, give it to me. I'll carry it so you don't have to. This is the difference between empathy and enmeshment. Empathy says, I understand your weather. Enmeshment says, Your weather is now inside my house, destroying my furniture. There is a somatic technique for this called grounding and witnessing. As they speak, feel your feet on the floor. Feel the weight of your body in the chair. Remind your nervous system, I am here. They are there. Their storm is not my flood. This is a practice, not a one-time fix. It requires the discipline to let them sit in their own discomfort. And here is the micro cliffhanger. What happens when you stop fixing? They either learn to fix themselves, or they find a new mechanic. Either outcome serves your freedom. Part 3. The Void Experiment. This is the most frightening part of the journey. You must stop filling the silence. In conversations, overfunctioners are terrified of lulls. They jump in with a question, a joke, a reassurance. It's a form of social fawning. Stop. Let the void hang there. Let the other person feel the vacuum of your missing labor. What happens in that void is a mirror. If they fill it with curiosity about you, are you okay? You're quiet tonight. There is hope for reciprocity. If they fill it with annoyance or just walk away, you have received the most painful but necessary gift. Clarity about the emptiness of the dynamic. Part 4. The Reclamation of Shadow Desire. You must own the part of you that wants to watch the city struggle. You must say to yourself, yes, I have wanted you to fail so you could see my value. I see that part of me. It is not evil. It is exhausted. When you integrate that shadow desire, when you stop pretending you are a saint with infinite patience, the pressure valve releases. You no longer need them to fail, because you are no longer basing your entire existence on their validation. You have validated yourself. You have seen your own invisible labor, and that internal recognition is the only currency that does not depreciate. Chapter 6. Integration, the economy of being. What does life look like on the other side of this reclamation? It is quieter. It is initially lonelier. And then, it becomes fuller than you ever imagined. You will find that your social circle contracts. This is not a failure. This is the shedding of a skin. The people who were only there for the utility of you will drift away because the service station is closed. This is a gravitational law of psychology. When you stop feeding the dynamic starves and dies. But in that newly cleared space, something remarkable happens. You start to notice reciprocity in places you never looked before. You start to hear appreciation that was always there, but drowned out by the noise of your own over-efforting. More importantly, you stop needing the external validation as oxygen. You have connected to an internal source of value. You are no longer asking, am I doing enough? You are asking, is this exchange filling me or draining me? This is the evolution from performance-based identity to essence-based presence. You realize that being valued isn't about being the loudest giver in the room. It's about being the most authentic presence in the room. Authenticity is magnetic because it is rare. Most people are projecting a curated image of who they think they should be. The sentinel projected the image of the tireless helper. The sovereign simply is. And because the sovereign is not desperate to please, the sovereign's attention becomes a valued commodity. Scarcity creates value. When you stop giving your energy away for free like flyers on a street corner, people start treating it like a rare, expensive gift, and they treat you accordingly. There is a nuance here that is critical to grasp. The sovereign is not a selfish person. The sovereign is a discriminating steward of their own energy. The sovereign understands that to say yes to everything is to say no to yourself. And the act of saying no to someone else is the act of saying yes to the version of you that is not exhausted. The 3 shifts in perception. 1. From they don't appreciate me to I am observing their capacity. You stop taking their lack of acknowledgement personally. You see it as data. This person has a low capacity for reciprocity. That is their limitation, not your lack of value. 2. From I must fix this to I trust their journey. This is the most loving form of detachment. You allow people the dignity of their own struggle. You are not their God. You are their companion. And sometimes, the most compassionate thing you can do is to step back and let them feel the cold wind of the gate you used to block. 3. From I am invisible to I am selective. You are not invisible. You are just standing in a room full of blind people. The sovereign walks out of that room and into spaces where eyes are open. Chapter 7. Closing reflection. The unbearable lightness of being seen. As we come to the end of this time together, I want you to sit with the most uncomfortable possibility of all. What if you were never asking the wrong person? What if you were asking the right person? Yourself, the wrong question. For years, maybe decades, you have been standing in the marketplace of relationships with a sign that says, "Will work for worth." And you have been perplexed and hurt that the shoppers only look at the work and never at the worker. Put the sign down. The world does not owe you appreciation for the labor you volunteered for in the silence of your own fear. This is a harsh law of psychology, but it is also the key to the cell door. You were the one holding the key the entire time, but you were using it to polish the bars instead of unlocking the lock. When you stop building your identity on the shifting sands of other people's acknowledgement, you discover a foundation of bedrock beneath your feet. You discover that you can survive the loss of the city's applause. You discover that the quiet of the night, when you are no longer standing guard at the gate, is not lonely. It is peaceful. You look up at the stars, the same stars the sentinel watched, but with a different pair of eyes. The sentinel saw them as cold, distant witnesses to his burden. The sovereign sees them as companions in a vast, balanced universe. There is nothing wrong with being kind. There is nothing wrong with being generous. But there is everything wrong with being unconscious about it. Go now and do the hardest thing you will ever do in any relationship. Stop proving your value. Start inhabiting it. The ones who are meant for you will find their way to the gate, not because you are holding it open with bleeding hands, but because the light inside the city, your light, is the only beacon they can see. And for the first time, you will be resting inside when they knock.